the first lesson is don't criticize, condemn, or complain others.
And this
or
falls
complain.
under, he has like different sections of the book, and we've
Yeah.
only done half. We're going to do the second half because the first half deals with more, well, we can apply better, like in terms of you personally, like just interacting with people in general, like the regular like everyday college student can. And then the second half of the book is more for like people that are
It's more geared towards like leadership type business type stuff,
yeah,
which is
more
very
like
applicable.
management.
But the first half is more applicable to just everyday life.
So we'll cover the second half, but yeah. So don't criticize. That's the first one, and it's under fundamental techniques in handling people.
There's 3 fundamental techniques, and this is the first one. So why shouldn't we criticize people, Mel? What's wrong with that?
You know, I actually the biggest reason why you shouldn't, and this is very personal. Like in high school, my coach, he wasn't very good at. And if you're listening to this, Coach Thorne, sorry to call you out, but there was one thing that he was very easy to like criticize you about a lot of things. He was just straight like and I feel like older people they grow up in an environment where they're just straight up. They just be like, yo, you suck. Like he wouldn't be like that, obviously, but I guess it's that feeling whenever you get criticized, like you instantly just feel so demoralized. Like, and the one thing he keep bringing up is you're gonna justify why you do. And one of the stories he brought up was like, who was it, Al Capone or something? Like,
and it was like he brought up like a bunch of Al
of like
Capone,
criminals and all that. But like the thing is, anytime you ask a criminal why did you do it, or like they're just criticized by being in like. You throw them in jail. That's like a form of criticism. Like, hey, you did bad.
Like the courts are like, you did this, and then
society's like, you did bad, so you're gonna go in jail. And you always they find a way to justify. They're like, oh no, I was doing it for the right of whatever it is, right? So criticizing someone, you're not gonna get the response you think you will. Like you're either just gonna demoralize that person and be like, well, now they're questioning, can I even do it? And that's for me in basketball. It's like, oh damn, well, am I actually even like good or whatever? And then second is they're just gonna justify what they did. So in turns, like you don't get anything from it. But what did you pull about like not criticizing people?
For me, it was more like kind of going off what you said. People justify everything, right? So like people don't like to blame themselves for anything. So especially if someone is criticizing you, right, but you don't blame yourself for something, what's your reaction? You're gonna be like, oh well, if Mel's criticizing me and I don't blame myself or whatever, then I think it's personal that Mel's like criticizing me, right? So then it creates tension between me and Mel. And then kind of a second point is that in psychology, this is a dude named B.F. Skinner. He went over this. Is that positive reinforcement works way better than negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement being criticizing to correct some action. Positive reinforcement being like, yo, Mel, great job last week on the podcast. Like, I really love the energy, et cetera. That's going to motivate him way more to give us that same energy rather than me being like, yeah, I mean, a couple weeks ago, your energy wasn't great. Pick it up next time. So, try again, bud. Like, it's very demoralizing.
Like, you hear that? If I heard that you said that to me, I'd be like, what? And then in turn, I'd be like, okay. And then it would turn something negative because then I would be like, okay, how can I criticize him? Like, what did he do that wasn't so great, right? So you get that negative feedback. But let's draw this line now and ask, well, when can you criticize someone, right? Because like criticism isn't always bad. Like, this is one of those things where this almost, when I first heard this, it sounded very conflicting. It's like, don't you want criticism? Isn't that how you improve, by hearing like honestly what you do? So do you have any insight about how to actually criticize people if they say don't criticize people?
For sure. I mean, his whole point with saying don't criticize is really like in a social setting. Like if you're hanging out with people and someone says something, about something that well, I guess, and it's wrong. If it has no impact on anything, then why say anything? Just let it go. That was his point, really. But in some scenarios, it is important for you to criticize, right? So let's say you're on a basketball team and you're working together, and you need someone to work with you at a certain point, and then when they mess up, it affects everyone else. So then you do need to criticize. But the point there was just examine yourself before you criticize others. Okay,
that's exactly what I was gonna hit on.
Yeah, like look at yourself and be like, all right, what am I doing wrong? And even tell the other person that. Be like, hey, like I messed this up. I'm sorry that I could have helped you more in X, Y, Z, but it would also really help me if you could do this for me as well. So it's more of an approach of, I'm not perfect. Neither are you. I'm not expecting you to be, but it would really help us both if you could do X, Y, Z for yourself and for us.
And then you can also, last thing on this point, you could also lay out like how you will improve, what you will do to improve.
Right.
And also the, constructive criticism and the thing where you can give the person something positive at the beginning, say, hey, you did this really well, blah, 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 and then like, oh, but you could also improve this, and then overall, like you'll be even better. So that's one way about looking. Don't criticize people, like definitely like, think about what you do, and if you are going to criticize them, make sure you add some positive reinforcement, criticize yourself or let them know about like both of y'all are not perfect. Then second, not least, this kind of goes hand in hand, but you want to appreciate people, man.
Yeah.
Like when someone does something good, like you
should let them know.
You should let them know.
But why? Why is so we kind of went over the criticism, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this appreciation thing is actually really important. What is the root reason of why appreciation can be so effective in your management of human relations?
And that's number one is because, and again, everything we're saying, we're pulling from Dale Carnegie, and this is us just synthesizing it. But people want to feel important. Like the feeling of it, like that's what continues to, I feel like that's the reason why society is where it is today, because of that feeling of wanting to be useful, be a productive citizens. Just wanting to feel like you matter is super important because whenever you get appreciated, it lets you know that like, okay, like, I'm adding value to something, or someone appreciates the work I'm doing. You feel important. Like, hey Ben, like, you did a really dope job on the podcast. Like you're a fundamental part. Like, sometimes I'll compliment Ben, be like, Ben is important. He does all this work for the podcast, yada, yada, yada. But, like, whatever. But, that alone, like, it makes Ben probably feel important. Like, I am a big contributor to this podcast. And especially when you're dealing with people and like in a team setting, like you want everyone to, if you want to get the most out of people, you have to, you got to have them feel like they are important to what you're trying to do.
Right. And kind of going off that, it's like, if you tell someone, if you're giving appreciation, that lets them know they're important, right? But it also lets them know in the future what they should be doing if they want to keep getting that feeling of importance. Because if you're saying, yo, Mel, last time we hopped on the podcast, great job, right? And I give you I'm like, man, your energy, your synthesis, your articulateness, I loved it. It was great. Then next time he hops on the podcast, he's like, all right, if I just do that again, then I'm fulfilling my purpose, my impact. It kind of feeds those feelings, if that makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what that appreciation does in terms of reinforcing that same behavior in the future, which kind of goes back to that positive reinforcement.
And another thing, like some people may struggle, like, I don't know if any, but number one actually being that you want this to be sincere and like honest. Like you don't want to go hype, like dude scores 0 points or something. Again, bring up a lot of sports reference, or someone on your team like absolutely does nothing to the group. Like you don't want to go in there and be like, yo, thank you so much for helping out the group, or you want to go like, bro, you killed it when you was playing out there. Like that's not being honest.
It has to be a sincere compliment. You have to really look at someone and say, what did they do right? And then give them a compliment on that, because that means a lot more. It can't be flattery is what Mel is saying.
But what about for the people that struggle with this? Like that apparently that just can't seem to appreciate others.
Let's start with, I want to hear a quote from Armelicus Milius real quick about this.
A little early
and then we can
quote
synthesize.
From Ralph Waldo Emerson. I think I read a couple of his poems back in my junior year, something. But
okay.
Every man I meet is my superior in some way. In that, I learn of him.
Can you say that again, just for emphasis?
Every man I meet is my superior in some way. In that, I learn of him.
So here, just take that. Let's take 5 seconds to just let that sink in.
Okay, 5 seconds is a long time.
That is a long time. Anyways, so kind of what he's saying here is like every person that you meet is better than you in some aspect of life. Okay. And so I feel like a lot of times we focus on ourselves. We say, okay, I want to feel secure in myself. So I focus on the things that I'm better at than everyone else. But that's kind of the wrong way to approach people. You should be looking at it and say, what is everyone else better than me at, right? And then how can I learn from them, from those things that I am worse at? How can I bridge that gap between my weaknesses and others, right? And so a lot of times if you're struggling to give compliments, it's really not because you're bad at compliments. It's because you're focusing too much on what you're better at than other people instead of focusing on what other people are better at than you, probably because you feel insecure in some way. That's just me being honest.
And another thing too is like that can help is recognizing those insecurities.
Yeah.
Like it's hard. People don't want to do it because you're having to deal with things that you're bad at, and you naturally don't want to view yourself in that light. But being okay with the fact that like you're just not going to be the best at anything. Any of the smartest people in the world, like most successful, they will never think that they're an expert in anything. They could have built the biggest business in their industry. They could have gotten a PhD from the best school and the best thing. Like those people still will say, at least the best ones, the top at their game will say like, I don't know everything. Like I'm still not, like even though I guess I'm categorized, I have the credentials as an expert in it. Like I still believe that I can continue to grow. I can continue to learn. So having that mindset, you're gonna pull that mindset just by listening to this podcast daily, baby. Okay, maybe not daily, weekly, baby.
Weekly.
So that just goes hand in hand with what we do here. But last but not least, all of these, like, you guys are gonna realize, like, all of these techniques, especially when it comes to, you know, handling people, very similar. Along with the next topic of ways to like make people like you. But this last one, arouse in the other person an eager want. So if you're wanting to, like, if you want to get someone to do something for you, right? Or like, you can't force them to want to do it.
Yeah,
That's one thing. It's like,
so people might argue with that, and they say, well, what if I point a gun to your head? Well, you're not really forcing them to do it. You're just saying you're shifting their desire, so they're only doing what you want because they don't want to die. So that's actually, you're just shifting their desires. That people only do things that they want to do. If that makes sense. So keep going now.
No, yeah, people.
Sorry.
It's like it's like one thing. Like, if you want someone to be super successful, and like you really believe that they can do it, like, sure, you can tell them all that you want. You can, you know, give them appreciation. You know, don't criticize them. Give them the positive feedback, reinforcement. But if there's not that want from them, like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So questions like, how do you get that want from them? And that's simply, well, number one, by doing the first things that we said, but also number two, like, something. I'll give you guys an example. So in my org, I have this woman called Elizabeth. I didn't know to say a girl or woman. I don't know. We're in the middle age of, we're in the very age of like growing up. But so Elizabeth, I asked her, I was like, hey, look, I want to do a podcast for this org so we can get our names out there, and I want a co-host, and I really want a woman to be a co-host on this, because especially in STEM, it's gonna be really cool if someone comes across our page and they're like, oh, there's a woman in STEM, like, I can do it. Like, it encourages, it encourages more people to get into it. So I was like, yeah, I definitely need that. And so I told her that, and I was like, you know, at first she was really like, oh, I don't know, like, I'm not the type of person, like, I'm not a really good talker, like, and she's telling me this, I'm like, boy, you capping. Like, the reason why I asked is because she was like, she's in the meetings, like, super energetic, like, talking, like, just having, like, I barely talked to her, and we have good conversations, and I was like, So what I told her was like, no, like, I think you'd be really good at it, like honestly, like, the reason why I'm reaching out and asking you is because I think you'd be a perfect fit,
right?
And then eventually, as time went on and she accepted the role, now she's hitting me up being like, yo, I can't wait to record the podcast. Like, I really can't. So,
yeah.
And then one of the advice, like, but to synthesize what I was really saying, though, is like, one, you can arouse that eager want from people by letting them know that you believe that they can do that thing, right?
Right.
That's one thing. And another thing that the book mentions is also like really understanding people's interests, right? So if you can take someone's interest and kind of tailor that, like, what you want them to do,
right,
and make it fit to what they really are interested in, you can arouse that in them by seeing the connection.
I'm gonna insert real quick. Think about this from like a business point of view. Like, if you want someone to buy something from you, you have to consider their interests, right? Yeah. So you only get people to do something or anything really by getting them to by aligning your interests with theirs, right? And then the real question off that I have for you is, how do I understand someone's interests? How do I do that?
You close your mouth and you open your ears.
Oh.
And asking questions. It's truly asking questions to the point, because people love talking about themselves. Like, man, like, people love talking about themselves because we don't get that opportunity to always do it.
Right.
So if you simply just keep asking questions, just keep asking, like, hey, you know, what do you like about this? And you have to, and the reason why you really have to, like, just close your mouth and really listen is because you need to make those connections. They won't directly tell you, like, oh, this specific thing is going to, like, pull this eager out of me. But if you, like, realize a trend, and when you're talking to someone, like, hey, they keep bringing this up, or you know, when they talked about this part of their life, they got super excited. You just see it in their face. So it's very simple. There's not this magical secret to it. It's simply just listen. Be a good listener, and make sure that you're actively listening and thinking about, like, okay, what is this person like? What is this like? If you do that, it's easy again.
I think this